Are you lost?
No, ma'am. I think I found what I was looking for.
He promised to stay, then left with a thaw.
You don't have to say anything else.
I want to. I just don't know how.
The storm rode in low, like a beast with breath made of thunder. Rain lashed the forest, tearing through pine branches, rattling the world with the weight of the sky. Up in the hills, where the land narrowed and the trees pressed in like old sentinels, a single cabin withstood the fury. Shutters drawn, smoke curling from a stone chimney, a soft flicker of firelight barely visible behind the thick-paneled walls. Inside, Evelyn Ward sat curled beneath a frayed quilt, her eyes fixed on the dancing glow of the hearth. The wind moaned down the chimney, and each gust made the cabin groan like an old ship adrift in storm water. Her hands, strong and calloused, tightened around the worn fabric. She hated storms, not because of the rain or the cold, but because they reminded her of what she had once waited for, and who never came back. 27, alone, forgotten by most. She hadn't stepped foot in town in nearly a month. Her chickens hadn't laid right since the snow melted, and the mail hadn't arrived since last Tuesday. But Evelyn didn't mind the solitude. She tended her days like she did her garden, quiet, orderly, and untouched by other hands. Thunder rolled across the ridge like distant cannon fire. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Quick. Measured. Her breath caught. No one ever came up this far past dusk. Not in this kind of weather. She sat frozen, heart drumming like hooves on dry earth. Another knock. Firmer. The candle in her hand trembled as she stood. She stepped slowly toward the door, each creaking board beneath her bare feet counting down something ancient in her chest. At the threshold, she paused. Her hand hovered over the iron latch. With a breath, she lifted the bar and cracked open the door. He stood there, soaked through, his coat torn across the shoulder, mud streaked up one side of his jaw. His dark hair hung in clumps, rain dribbling from his brow. In his eyes burned steadiness, not the eyes of a beggar or a thief, but of someone used to long miles and hard truths. Beneath his coat flashed silver, a ranger's badge, a U.S. Marshal's iron star. "Ma'am," he said, voice gravel-worn but steady, "I didn't mean to frighten you. My horse went down near the ridge. I saw your chimney smoke and hoped." He trailed off. Evelyn's expression didn't soften. Not yet. "I'm with the Yellowstone Patrol," he continued. "Name's Silas Boone. I swear I mean no harm." Still she said nothing. "I'd be obliged for a bit of shelter. Just the night." The wind shoved against his back, pushing cold and rain inside. Evelyn stepped aside. He entered without comment, head slightly bowed, careful not to drip on the braided rug near the hearth. She closed the door behind him and dropped the latch. Without a word, she moved to the fireplace and stirred the embers. He set down his satchel, then peeled off his coat, revealing a long, faded scar down his right arm, the kind made by blade or bullet, the kind that had a story behind it. But Evelyn didn't ask. She brought him a towel instead, then poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to him with 2 steady hands. Silas sat near the fire, steam rising from his boots, both palms wrapped around the cup. He didn't look at her, not in the way some men did, but with something more restrained, more thoughtful. Like he was grateful. Like he'd noticed the way she carried herself without needing her to explain why. "Why were you out this way?" she asked, her voice quiet, more curiosity than caution. He took a sip before answering. "Looking for a missing boy. 17. Trapper. Went out alone and didn't come back. His brother's worried." "You won't find him tonight." "No," Silas agreed. "Not tonight." The storm roared against the roof, thunder chasing wind like hounds behind a stag. Evelyn sat down across from him, her chair angled toward the fire. The candle flickered on the table between them. She wrapped the quilt tighter around her shoulders. "You live alone?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded. "Storms don't sit easy with you." She hesitated, then answered, "Not since the last one." They fell into silence. Not heavy, not awkward, just 2 strangers sharing space while the wild roared outside. Her fingers absently worked the corner of her sleeve, unraveling a thread she had unraveled before. His eyes followed the movement, but he said nothing. "Do you always knock?" she asked suddenly. Silas looked up. "Some men wouldn't have." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "My mother taught me that a man knocks when he needs help, not when he wants to take it." Evelyn blinked. Her expression didn't change, but something behind it shifted, as if the cabin had exhaled just slightly. He asked nothing more of her that night. Didn't pry. When she handed him a wool blanket and pointed toward the bench beside the hearth, he nodded his thanks and stretched out with quiet gratitude. She watched him from the doorway to her small bedroom. The firelight made his face glow bronze and shadow, and for a moment, he didn't look like a stranger. He looked like something remembered. The storm howled through the eaves. She closed the door. Before sleep took her, she lay listening, not to the wind this time, but to the slow, steady breathing of the men who had knocked, and the strange comfort it brought. Morning brought pale light and low fog rising off the trees. Evelyn stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed against the chill. She half expected him to be gone. Most men didn't linger after warmth had served its purpose. But Silas was there, sleeves rolled up, splitting wood behind the shed like it was his own cabin to tend. His axe moved with a rhythm not rushed, not boastful, just precise. Honest work. You don't have to do that, she called out. It's good for the blood, he replied without looking up. She didn't argue. Instead, she returned inside and set water to boil. When he joined her again, hatless and dusted with sawdust, she offered him a slice of cornbread and a cup of coffee that was stronger than yesterday's. He took both with quiet thanks. They ate without words for several minutes, listening to the wind roll through the pines. You still plan to search? She asked. He nodded. Soon as the trail's dry enough. She stared into her cup. If you follow the ridge west, there's a ravine that traps fog. I saw smoke out that way 2 days ago. Thought it was clouds. His eyes met hers. Why didn't you say? Didn't trust you yet. And now? She shrugged. Silas stood and reached for his coat. I'll ride out tomorrow. She rose with him, though she didn't quite know why. As he stepped onto the porch, he paused. I was right to knock, he said, looking out over the valley. Evelyn stepped beside him, and I was right to open the door. For a long while, they stood in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching the mist rise over the trees. The world was still wet and wild, but something in her chest had steadied. It was the first storm in years that hadn't left her feeling cold. And as Silas turned toward the horizon, she knew that when he returned, if he returned, she would be waiting, not trembling, but open. By morning, the store had passed, but Silas had not. Evelyn stirred before the sun crested the ridge, pulling on her boots and wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. The cabin was quiet, the fire now little more than amber coals. For a moment, she thought the night had been a dream, that the stranger had vanished with the wind. But when she opened the door, there he was. Out back, near the shed, Silas swung an axe clean through a length of cedar. His coat hung from a fence post, and steam curled from his shoulders in the cool dawn air. His rhythm was measured, his grip firm, each strike precise like a heartbeat. He looked up only when he heard her steps on the porch. You've done enough, she called. That's my work. He rested the axe head on a stump, smiling through the mist. It's good for the bones. She didn't argue. She didn't thank him either. Just turned and went inside to start breakfast. By the time he entered, wiping sweat from his neck with a dry rag, she had cornbread on the skillet and coffee percolating. He washed his hands at the basin without asking, then sat when she gestured toward the table. They ate without ceremony, two people used to quiet meals. It was Evelyn who broke the silence. Why'd you really come to the cabin? He looked up, chewing slowly. I told you. My horse. No, she said, calm but clear. You passed 3 empty cabins on your way through these hills. Any of them would have done. But you knocked on my door. Silas leaned back, surprised not by the accusation, but by her insight. I was given a map, he admitted. Town clerk marked your place. Said you were the last homestead the boy might have passed. She nodded once, slowly. I haven't seen anyone. Then a pause. Her fingers tapped once against the cup. Though, 2 days ago, I thought I saw smoke. Northridge. Looked like clouds at first. I didn't think much of it. Silas straightened slightly. That could be him. He stood, moving toward the window, scanning the tree-line even now, though the forest was shrouded in mist. You should wait another day, Evelyn said, more quickly than she meant. The trail's still wet. I can handle it. I know, she said. Her voice was quieter now. That's not the reason. He turned. She was standing, spine straight, chin lifted, but her hands curled tight at her sides. You shouldn't go. Not yet. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He only nodded and returned to his seat. The rest of the morning passed with gentle talk. They spoke of simple things. How bees behaved before a frost, the trick to raising sourdough without yeast, how the valley changed color when the first goldfinch returned. Evelyn laughed once, a short, surprised sound that escaped her before she could catch it. Silas glanced up, and for a moment, didn't say anything. But his smile lingered. You ever miss town? He asked, hours later as they shelled beans together on the porch. Not the people, she said, but sometimes the music. What kind? Church choirs. I used to sing alto. That was before. She didn't finish. Silas let the silence sit, unpushed. I hated being a ranger at first, he said after a while. Too many lost causes. Too many people not wanting to be found. So why keep doing it? He looked out at the horizon, voice low. Because every once in a while, someone needs help. And they don't even know it. Evelyn didn't respond. But something in her expression, the way her lips pressed together, the softness in her eyes, said she understood. As dusk fell and the rain returned in quiet sheets, Evelyn lit a new fire. The light danced across the walls, softer this time. Less defense, more welcome. She took her seat across from him as before, but this time her shawl brushed against his sleeve. She didn't move away. You weren't the first man to knock on this door, she said, not quite looking at him. Silas waited. He said he'd marry me. Promised to build a second cabin. Said the storms here didn't scare him. Silas watched her closely. But when spring came, he left. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't write. She stared into the fire. That was 4 years ago. I think I started fearing storms after that. As if everyone was coming to shake loose whatever was left of me. Silas didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, gently, you don't have to say anything else. I want to, she said, but I don't know how. You just did. She looked at him fully then, and her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were tired, yes, but alive. Honest. The fire popped. Outside, the forest exhaled through mist and pine. I was going to leave this place, she admitted. Last winter. I packed my bags twice. Even wrote a letter to my cousin in Montana. Why didn't you? She smiled softly. I kept waiting for one more reason to stay. Silas turned toward the flames. His voice was low. Maybe that reason found you. Neither moved for a long while. They just sat, letting the heat of the hearth and the unspoken truth pass between them. That night, the cabin didn't creak with loneliness. It didn't hold the heavy silence of ghosts. It held warmth. Company. Something fragile, maybe, but real. Evelyn didn't sleep with her back to the door anymore. She slept knowing someone had knocked and chosen not to leave. And outside, as rain whispered against the roof, the fire in the hearth refused to die. The morning air was still damp from the storm, and the clouds parted in patches above the pine line, but Evelyn barely noticed a break in the weather. Her eyes were fixed on Silas, who adjusted the saddle cinch with a quiet determination, his movements practiced and firm. The horse, a model gray gelding borrowed from a neighbor 3 miles down the slope, stomped restlessly on the soft earth. You'll be careful, she asked, her voice tighter than she intended. Silas glanced over, a soft line forming near his mouth. I always am. She tilted her head, unconvinced. No, you're not, she said, her lips curling into a reluctant smile. Your coat's still torn. He paused, hand still on the saddle horn, then reached inside his coat and pulled something out. A silver badge, dulled with time but still gleaming around the edges. He walked toward her, took her hand, and placed it gently in her palm. Hold on to this, he said, until I come back. I don't need a token, she murmured. It's not a token, he replied. It's a promise. Evelyn's fingers curled around the badge. Its weight was small, but it pressed into her like a truth. Silas mounted without another word. Their eyes met one last time, and then he turned toward the ridgeline. The sound of hooves faded slow through the pines until nothing remained but the hush of wind moving through leaves. She waited. The first day passed in long, quiet hours. She fixed a hinge on the coop, mended a quilt, swept the hearth twice. The badge sat on her kitchen table, untouched. By the second day, the weather warmed. She walked to the ridge herself, just far enough to see the valley spread wide beneath her. No sign of him. No tracks. The badge gleamed in the sunlight when she returned. On the third day, Evelyn rose early and made 2 cups of coffee by habit. She drank one slowly. The other went cold. The sky began to turn again by evening. Heavy clouds brewed low and dark, the same kind that had roared through the valley less than a week before. She stood by the window, arms crossed, lips tight, watching the trees sway. The 4th day broke with thunder in the distance. Evelyn didn't bother lighting the fire until late afternoon. She couldn't bring herself to sit. Couldn't eat. She just paced, between the door and the hearth, the table and the window, always glancing at the badge like it might rise up and speak. Then, as dusk folded into a gray rain, a knock. Not hard. Not loud. But there. She froze, blood rushing to her ears. Her heart wanted to believe. She opened the door. A boy stumbled in, barely upright. 17 at most. His coat hung off him like wet paper, and his face was pale with exhaustion. Evelyn caught him just as his knees gave out. Later, when he was wrapped in blankets and propped beside the fire, he spoke. "I was lost," he whispered. 4 days. Fog came down and I couldn't find the ridge again. I thought I'd die out there. Evelyn handed him broth, warm and slow to swallow. Then I saw him, the boy went on. A ranger. Tallman. Scar on his arm. He was on a horse. Said his name was Silas. Evelyn's chest tightened. Said I should head west. Told me to look for a woman who lived alone in a cabin. Said she had a good heart. Said she'd help. She stared at the fire, unable to speak. I tried to follow him, the boy said, but he rode off fast. Never saw where he went. Evelyn sat long into the night after the boy slept, staring into the flames. She held the badge in her lap, running her thumb along its edge, feeling every groove and dent. The storm returned with force, lightning arcing across the hills like silver veins in the sky. She didn't flinch this time. Day 5 came. Then 6. No rider. She told herself he was delayed, or tracking something, or tending a wound. But still, her eyes drifted to the trail every time the wind shifted the trees. Then, just as the 7th night fell and thunder cracked with a sound so familiar it curled in her bones, another knock. It came like the others, simple, sure, unhurried. She stepped toward the door, her breath sharp and shallow. When she opened it, Silas stood there, rain pouring down his coat, hat in his hand, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. But his eyes weren't tired this time. They were lit with something steady and sure. "Storm caught me again," he said. She didn't speak. She just stepped forward and reached for his hand. He took it. She looked up at him, her eyes misted but strong. "You didn't just lose your heart here," she whispered. "You gave it away." He leaned down, forehead brushing hers, their hands clasped tight between them like a bridge no storm could pull apart. Later, they sat by the fire once more, not across from each other now, but side by side. The cabin glowed. The wind raged outside, but the walls didn't creak with loneliness anymore. Evelyn leaned against his shoulder. "You found him." "I did." "And you found your way back." "I had to," he said. "Something was waiting for me." She didn't respond. She just placed a badge back into his hand and closed his fingers around it. He didn't put it away. They said nothing else for a while. Just listened to the rain tap soft against the shutters, like a lullaby they both remembered from somewhere far back in time. From that day on, the cabin never stood alone again. She lived alone in a cabin, trembling in the storm. A ranger knocked, and lost his heart inside.